Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, and otherworldly and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitrealshow.com. Without further ado, welcome to this week's episode.
How dare you speak reality and truth?
Jesus.
I like Crispy, but we're not like, we need to record a few more before she goes.
Scratch and sniff friends?
No, we're not scratch and sniff friends yet.
Whoa. We are recording, by the way.
Right, that works. I always enjoy coming on the show to be completely and utterly embarrassed.
Well,
and I just
you
keep
shame
coming back for
yourself,
more.
sir.
Shame myself or embrace it?
Embrace it.
Yeah, I do.
Hi, welcome to the Creepin' It Real. Oh, it's my show. That's why Chris is not saying anything. Welcome to the Creepin' It Real show. This is our bonus/boner episode on Haunted Hell's Kitchen in New York City. I'd like to bring in our illustrious co-host, Miss Christy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm in kind of shell shock right now, so I'm just probably not going to be as boisterous as I never am anyway. So cool. Nothing's changed. Doing great. Happy to be here.
Why are you shell-shocked? Can we ask?
I'm exhausted. I've been on the mountains of Tennessee. You get to go to cool places for work.
Is it pretty, though, at least? Like the mountains of Tennessee?
It is pretty. But after 4 days of slipping around in cow shit, you're just like, okay, I could totally go back to the city now. No Uber Eats. Nothing.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
That voice is our special co-host guest today. Dan, you want to introduce
Are you
yourself?
sure? Because you were like, that was like a
I don't know
question.
what to say about this guy.
I mean, it's October, so could I be the guest ghost?
Not unless you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, debatably, depending on the day, I could be dead on the inside.
Well, we'll make it work
No
then.
soul.
I have 2 on the bottom of my feet.
I almost died.
She did.
Cool.
I have mild allergic reactions to any medications that, just talking about being exhausted is why I'm telling this story, to any medications that say that they might cause restlessness. So like Benadryl or things like that. I went ahead and took Sudafed from my boss, but I had been taking Alka-Seltzer, so Alka-Seltzer lasts 4 hours. Fun fact, everybody, Sudafed lasts 12 hours. I already take an antihistamine for allergies, so that's a 24-hour cycle. And then to sleep, because I was still snuffy, I took some Theraflu with the same ingredients that the Sudafed had, and then had an allergic reaction to what the concoction that I had basically made was methamphetamine. And I found out why they call it a tweaker. Is like your muscles start tweaking and you're like wired and your heart rate gets really crazy and it's really scary. So I didn't get any sleep whatsoever. It was fun.
That's awful. No, really.
She really isn't.
I'm sorry. I really am feeling for you right now, and I am truly sorry that happened to you, and that's very scary. And
it's kind of hilarious though. I mean, it's just that's how dumb I am, but like... and I'm fine. I live to tell about it, but I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about exhaustion, I'm so fucking tired right now because, like, my kids get up at, 3, so I finally was starting to, wear off, and I was like, I can sleep, and then my kids were coming in and out of my room, and that was neat, so, yeah.
You want to hear something truly horrifying that happened to me today?
Is it meth-related?
No, thank God.
Oh, go ahead.
Meth adjacent.
I decided to get a tuna melt from Subway.
Oh.
Not a good idea.
I'm making faces. You can't.
It's gross.
Question. Was your first mistake Subway or first mistake tuna melt?
First mistake Subway, then second mistake tuna melt. Well, I didn't choose the place. That was my son loves Subway. And I got what he got because it sounded good. But if it was a tuna melt anywhere else, maybe. But I feel like I could possibly barf, so... I always view it when you're serving the tuna out of a ice cream scoop, there's a problem. Well, that, and when it's it's almost like a liquid versus a solid. Yeah. Like, it's just not staying in the wrap. It was like, And then I took a bite of it, and I was like, this tastes kind of funny, but I'll just keep eating it and see what happens. And then now I'm like, oh, this is what happens.
Well, just think of it as doing research for the show.
Yeah.
Something
True
horrific
terror.
has happened to all of us.
True terror. I'll tell you what.
So we don't have any weird news on this show because it is a boner episode, as I mentioned. Dan and I went to. He's making nasty hand gestures over here. We went to New York Comic Con, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago on the show, and we did a really great tour. Ghost Tours NYC, Ghost and Murders walking tours. Was shout out to them. That Elise is the owner of the company, and Megan was our very knowledgeable tour guide. They do different tours of different neighborhoods, but since we were staying in Hell's Kitchen, we thought that would be the most fun place to tour. And they did a special tour just for us. Megan, super awesome person and really fun to talk to and incredibly knowledgeable. Their stuff is very, very well researched. Our stuff, I just want to be clear, there was some concern that apparently they've had people kind of stealing their customers or kind of like copying their whole like vibe.
Yeah, swooping in on their territory, basically.
Yeah, so we definitely have done our own research for the show. There's a lot of research that we put into this. We rearranged everything so that it's not in the order that they took the tour in, but still we want to give credit for the idea and for a lot of like the starting points for our research came from this tour.
Yes, if you are ever in New York, book them because it is amazing. I worked with Elise to get this arranged. She was so accommodating, so pleasurable to work with. If I ever go back to New York, I'm going to be booking with them again.
For sure. And Megan's adorbs. I posted half of a story onto our Facebook page so that all of our good creepers can see Megan telling one of these really creepy murder stories. And then the other half of the story and then another story equally as good are going to be available exclusively on our Patreon page. So check that out. It's worth it. They're put chills up your spine. And without further ado, Christy, can you roll into some of the background of the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood?
Sure. Right after I belch this up Subway. Right there.
After the vomit.
Woo! Okay, I'm ready. Hell's Kitchen, sometimes known as Clinton, is a neighborhood on the west side of Midtown Manhattan in New York City. It is traditionally considered to be bordered by 34th Street to the south and 59th Street to the north, 8th Avenue to the east, and the Hudson River to the west. Local historian Mary Clark explained the name thus. Ooh, it's fancy. Again, I just belched. I'm sorry. First appeared in the print on September 22nd, 1881, when a New York Times reporter went to the West 30s with a police guide to get details of a multiple murder there. He referred to a particularly infamous tenement. What's a tenement? What's a tenement?
What is a tenement?
It's like an old school apartment building.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Old school apartment building at 39th Street and 10th Avenue as Hell's Kitchen, quote unquote, and said that the entire section was probably the lowest and filthiest in the city. Wow, that says something. According to this version, 39th Street between 9th and 10th Avenues became known as Hell's Kitchen, and the name was later expanded to surrounding streets. I think that's a cool-ass name, to be honest with you, but okay. Another version ascribes the name's origins to a German restaurant in the area known as Hell's Kitchen after its proprietors, but the most common version traces it to the story of Dutch Fred and the Cop, a veteran policeman who, with his rookie partner, was watching a small riot on West 39th Street near 10th Avenue. The rookie is supposed to have said, "This place is hell itself," to which Fred replied, "Hell's a mild climate. This is Hell's Kitchen." And I bet he had, like, one of those cool fedoras and, like, a cigarette.
I think that's true.
I was thinking cigar.
Ooh. Maybe both
Ooh,
at
maybe
the same
pipe.
time.
Oh, a pipe, yeah.
A pipe, maybe like a cape, like a Sherlock cape.
Although, I was kind of picturing old school constable, but that's England.
Yeah. That's what I was picturing too.
So the following stories, this is not a Sherlock Holmes mystery.
That escalated quickly. We went from a
It really
fedora
did. I gotta
to
keep
Sherlock
an eye on
Holmes.
you. We don't have Yardley to ground us on this.
Poor guy. Poor Dan. You're going to have to help us out because we'll get out there.
If I have to be the adult, we're fucked. By the way, I cursed to deal with it. Anyway.
Yay,
these are now, the following stories are all true and they're in date order. So.
Okay, now you have to bear with me reading, so, well, bear with me. Rawr. Yes, I know. This took place in 1792, and it is Lucy Ryan, Ghost of June Havoc House. The ghost of Hungry Lucy is said to reside in a house that is 150 years old in an area of New York known as Hell's Kitchen, which is an old area in the 40s between 9th and 10th Avenues, close to the theater district. It was at the time of the spirit report sighting in the ownership of a Mr. Payne, who had remodeled it to keep the Victorian appearance inside and out. It is often reported that a remodeling or construction in older buildings may be the reason for ghost activity, as they don't like change. The house was subsequently purchased by an actress, June Havoc, who had the home renovated into the basement, grounded floor, and second floor apartment. It soon became obvious that no tenant would renew the lease on the ground floor or basement apartment, and this was because of the spirit of Hungry Lucy. June Havoc herself occupied the ground floor apartment and had heard the noises herself. It was in this period that a medium was invited to visit the house, and as usual, the medium was told nothing of the background of the house, with the idea of ridding the basement apartment of the noisy and troublesome ghost. It was reported that there seemed to be a series of insistent sounds, which at first were rather soft, and then the tapping began. The day the medium visited, there was indeed loud tapping heard, and when the spirit was addressed, it stopped. The medium seated herself in the area on the floor where the tapping seemed to emanate from and went into a trance. The medium said the term hungry, and then when was asked why, responded, no food, which was repeated in a very frantic manner.
That would have been creepy. Hungry, no food, hungry. That's creepy.
Oh, that's bizarre. And could you imagine what type of voice that would have been in?
No.
The spirit said her name was Lucy Ryan, and she had been here before the house was built, and the year was 1792. Lucy stated that she had known soldiers and was looking for food, and she was starving. The ghost did not know that she was dead. A small Victorian table in the room began to move on its own accord, and Lucy said she wanted them to leave. The medium felt that a girl was buried in the ground under the house near where she was seated. After the medium had left, it was reported that the spirit was much more active than before, so the medium returned. Lucy had known a man named Alfred and had been waiting for him, but it is thought that he had died and left. The medium communicated to Lucy that Alfred had left and she should follow him. After this, it was reported that the house was much quieter and things were settling down. The medium made a second visit and said that Lucy had died of starvation and sickness at this location, as had many others, including soldiers, probably of plague.
Wow.
Through the time, the ghost of Hungry Lucy became more weak and then disappeared entirely.
That's a creepy little story.
Mm-hmm.
So while we were on the tour, Megan mentioned that this landmark tavern had opened in 1868 and was still open. And so we decided that we would go there for dinner. We took some friends after the con, and she said that we could try to get the staff to tell us things that they had experienced. Super awesome staff, by the way. Shout out Landmark Tavern.
Oh, amazing.
Great dinner, good alcohol selection. We had a lot of fun. The service was amazing. They were so nice to us. But some people were reluctant to talk about the haunting, and others were said they didn't know, and they kept telling me how to talk to a specific person. So finally I got one of the bartenders, who was super busy, to open up a little bit about it. And apparently, historically, a young woman did die of suicide on the third floor of the place, because it's a big old building. But in their area, apparently when they're closing up at night, they have real candles on the table. It's one of them classy joints. And every time that they try to put the candle out at a specific table, it comes back on.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, she can make fire. That's pretty,
That's a alley.
So she's a pyro. Cool.
Yes.
So I'm going to read the next story, which happened on March 12th, 1888. Minnie Lobkochner poisons her kids. This is a really sad story. I might have filmed this one. I think this might be one of the ones that I filmed for our Patreon. I'm going to scoot in a little closer. Ouch. So Minnie was mentally ill and resented her children. Her behavior led to the equivalent of social services, and I actually wrote this one myself just based off of what I remembered them telling us. The equivalent of social services had notified her that they were going to be coming to take her children. So she decided that she was going to remove her kids on her own terms. During the blizzard of 1888, she gave her 3 sons tea laced with rat poison under the guise of warming them up. They spent an entire night in agony, and their moans and groans could be heard, and their mother just endured all this and, waited for them to die. But actually, all 3 boys made full recoveries.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So, Grass poisoned him again.
Oh.
She poisoned them again, and this time it was so sad. The boys don't have a father figure or anything like that. They knew that their mother was giving them tea that made them sick. And they asked her, please, Mama, can we not drink this tea? And she's like, nope. Yep. So she's like, nope, you drink this tea.
God.
So after another agonizing night, 2 of the 3 boys died. The 3rd one actually survived. And when this was all discovered, he was still removed by social services, and Minnie spent the rest of her life in a mental health lockdown facility.
Oh, sure. Tell him she's crazy.
Yeah, she gets to live a probably pretty nice life as far as not having to hustle for money anymore, not having any responsibilities, whatever the fuck. So a lot of these stories are unpleasant, just FYI, but this is a true crime and ghost podcast, so here we are. So on August 12th of 1900, the Hell's Kitchen race riots occurred. The New York City race riot began with a series of misperceptions between one Arthur Harris, a black newcomer to New York, who thought a white undercover policeman, Robert Thorpe, was making improper advances toward a female friend of his on August 2nd. For his part, Thorpe thought that the friend was basically, a prostitute. So when Harris approached Thorpe, an argument ensued. Thorpe hit Harris with a billy club, and Harris ended up knifing Thorpe, who died of his wounds several days later. Harris fled to Washington, D.C. Between this initial event and Thorpe's funeral on August 12th, because now you've killed a police officer, rumors circulated that the black community was now heavily armed. On the day of Thorpe's funeral, the rumors turned into rioting between blacks and whites in the low-income Hell's Kitchen neighborhood. For 4 days, some 10,000 young white folks, and the city police were among them, attacked virtually every black person they encountered on the street, leaving scores of both races injured, and 1 black gentleman died.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen for you.
Hell's Kitchen.
So the next one is the Cape Man murders, and it comes from the New York Daily News.
We're going to cook up some more murders.
Murder.
Oops. There were 390 murdies.
Murdies.
Murdies. So cute. Murdies. Aren't they cute? I'm going to do that again. There were 390 murders tallied by New York City police in 1959, and the Cape Man did only 2 of them. But these 2 shook loose the city's worst nightmares. Because Salvador Argan killed 2 people he didn't know. Because when he was captured, he said he didn't care. Because he was 16 years old. What? Because he belonged to a street gang, and it didn't help that he was Puerto Rican. Sal Argan started the night of Sunday the 30th of August as a fashion statement. Ooh, dark blue, red line, Dracula-style cape, fancy buckled shoes. He ended it as the city's most wanted man. Wow. You wore a cape? Cape Man stabbed Robert Young.
That's why it's the Cape Man murders, silly.
I get it now. Cool. I mean, not cool, but I'm just picturing what he looks like in my head.
If you're going to murder someone, do it stylishly.
Put a cape on, yeah. Cape Man stabbed Robert Young and Anthony Skinny Krasinski. Was he trying to go back in time and stop somebody from making some shit and reproducing some little shit that's trying to blow people up? Maybe. I'm just kidding. A few minutes after midnight in a West 45th Street playground. Wow. After Argan was captured, he was quoted as saying, "I don't care if I burn. My mother could watch me." Whoa, okay. A little intense, isn't he? Argan was sentenced to death, which made the 16-year-old the youngest prisoner ever sentenced to death row in New York. While many New Yorkers were outraged about the killings, others, like former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt and Robert Young, the father of one of the victims, campaigned for leniency. While on death row, Argan became a born-again Christian. Don't they always? In prison, he learned to read and write, earning his high school equivalency diploma. He wrote poems about his life and street life, including The Political Identity of Salvador Argan, Travel Log of 34 Years, Uruu Sasa, Freedom Call, and Justice, Law, and Order, which were published by some newspapers. He later earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and Philosophy from the State University of New York in New Paltz, New York. His death sentence was commuted to life in prison by Governor Nelson Rockefeller in 1962. Is he still alive? Probably not. Right?
He is not.
Bummer.
I don't remember. He passed away at the age of 42.
Oh, that's young.
When he got out of prison, he dedicated his life to basically against gang violence and just trying to prevent youth like himself from following the same path. He caught pneumonia, went into the hospital, and died, unfortunately. I believe it was in the, I want to say 1990s, early 2000s. His life actually got turned into a Broadway play musical.
What?
Yeah. If
They'll
you
do
Google,
any kind of musical these days.
Yeah, they do. It was really weird. It was like gospel and rockabilly music, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say Paul Simon was involved, but I don't think
Johnny
it's correct.
Cash because it's all prison music.
So very, very fascinating story.
Very strange to go from killing two people, having a death sentence, to having a musical starting about you.
Oh, the whole story sort of reminds me of The Outsiders. You know, Podium Boy. He's like, he's willing to kill people, but he's like an unwilling gang member. It's just a situation he's in, and like, you know, he wants to stay gold. Like, I don't know. It's very dramatic.
All right.
On that note,
my turn. We are going to move up to 1977, and it is Charles Ruby Stein is dismembered. Our source is mafia.wiki.org. So Charles Ruby Stein was a Jewish mobster and loan shark with ties to the Genovese and Colombo crime family. Stein was a native of New York and was known as the loan shark to the stars. He was a close associate of Nicholas Jiggs, I probably should have read this before, Forlono, Colombo crime family capo, Genovese family boss, Fat Tony, Anthony Solaron, whatever. He was said to have had around $1 million out on the streets, earning him and his partners exorbitant interest rates. Stein was allegedly one of the biggest loan sharks in the New York City during the 1960s and 70s, and also ran gambling clubs on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. In the 1970s, Stein hired Irish mobster Jimmy Cahoon, the future boss of the Westies, as his bodyguard. Cahoon soon had Irish mob boss Mickey Spillane killed and took over the Hell's Kitchen rackets, and then sought to eliminate Ruby Stein. A number of the Westies owed large amounts of money to Stein and were looking to escape these obligations. Stein was lured to the 596 Club, which was owned by a member of the Westies, and was shot to death. Once dead, they dragged his corpse to the bathroom area and proceeded to dismember him and bag off the body parts, and then dumped them in the Hudson River. However, Cahoon had forgotten to puncture the lungs, and Stein's torso washed ashore and was found.
Yikes.
Oh, I didn't know that part
happens.
of the story.
yeah.
I know, you just forget the little pop of balloon and you're in trouble. Another reason it is believed that Stein was killed was so Cahoon and his gang could take Stein's black book, which listed all of his loan shark customers, and collect the debts themselves.
That's pretty smart, actually.
It is. The details of Stein's murder were later revealed when Westies member Mickey Featherstone turned informant. Now, what's interesting about this, the 596 Club has become another establishment in New York. Stein's body was dismembered in the ladies' bathroom.
What?
So whenever,
Yeah.
yeah. So whenever ladies have used the restroom at that location, they have reported feeling kind of like this eerie sense of being watched or kind of like
dismembered.
being dismembered.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird and possible, what was part of something we did not include, the 596 bar, there were actually rumors of mobsters after they dismembered corpses there, they would roll the head back and forth on top of the bar.
I don't remember that. Man, you remember a lot.
Oh, that came up in some of the research.
Oh, okay.
It was
Interesting.
disturbing.
Yeah. Perfect for this podcast. So speaking of disturbing, this is a particularly fucked up little tale, and you're going to have a lot of me reading, so yay. Richard Cottingham, the torso killer of Hell's Kitchen, a.k.a. the Times Square Ripper. So for those of you who haven't been to the Hell's Kitchen area, Times Square is sort of in that vicinity. This comes from an article at criminalyintrigue.com. I don't really care for the writing that much, but it is what it is. So I'm going to be reading directly from that. So basically, long story short, this asshole, Robert Cottingham, had started his life early with assaulting women, with robbing them, with hurting them. But his lust seemed to never fully be satisfied with only assaulting and robbing them. So in December of 1977, Marilyn Carr would be claimed as his first murder victim. Richard had abducted the woman and brought her to a hotel. Once inside, he tortured the girl repeatedly through various means, including beatings, bites, cuts, and rape. She had been restrained and strangled, ending the 26-year-old's life. He dumped her along a chain-link fence near an apartment complex that he once called home, with the ligature still tied around her neck. There were no known murder victims in 1978. However, he went on to rape and torture two more women. So there was no more victims in the rest of 77. He raped and tortured two more women in 78, one of whom had been pregnant. In 79, he abducted a teenage sex worker named Helen Sykes from Times Square. She would later be found in Queens, horribly mutilated. Her legs had been severed and dumped a few blocks away. Her throat had been cut so severely that he had nearly severed her head. In December of 79, he had his most vicious attack to date. Dita Godarzi and another unknown female had joined Richard in a hotel room near his stomping grounds by Times Square. Once inside, he bound both females and tortured them for hours. It is unclear exactly how he killed the women, but he went on to sever their heads and hands. Once he got his fill, he decided to light the bodies on fire and flee the scene. Firefighters responded quickly to the room and put out the fire, and they were stunned at the horrific sight of the mutilated corpses. The case was soon linked to his previous murder victim, Helen Sykes, letting police know that they were dealing with a serial killer. One more detail about the case was that the severed body parts of the two women were never located, and it's still a mystery as to what Richard did with them. Richard would commit two more murders in May of 1980, just weeks apart. The first killing was that of Valerie Ann Street. Like the other victims, she was bound with handcuffs and tortured. Her body was found covered with bite marks. She died of asphyxiation, and when he was done, he stuffed her under the bed. She'd be discovered by hotel staff accidentally when they were attempting to vacuum under the bed. Her arms were still handcuffed behind her back. Police eventually linked Richard to the case because of a fingerprint found on the handcuffs. This was also the same hotel room where he would eventually be apprehended. In the following week of May 15th, 1980, another sex worker was lured into a Manhattan motel under the guise of more work, but most likely ambush. When Cottingham locked the door, Jean Reiner was raped, stabbed, mutilated, and tortured. He cut her breasts off and ended her life via strangulation. Her body would be left in the room and subsequently set on fire again by Cottingham before he fled the scene. Investigators were again able to quickly link this murder with his many others due to his signature MO. After the abduction of Leslie Ann Odell, authorities were able to quickly build a case against the deranged suspect. Within his home, detectives were able to find a trophy room which contained multiple personal items and keepsakes belonging to his victims. One of Cottingham's only admissions of guilt was, "I have a problem with women." Understatement of the
No
fucking year.
shit.
Multiple trials were held, and he was found guilty in each of them. After one of the trials, he smashed his glasses and attempted to cut himself and take his own life, but was unsuccessful. He will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. By his own admission, he claims to have killed upwards of 100 women and remains a suspect in dozens of unsolved cases. One of the unsolved cases was solved when he admitted guilt in 1967 to the murder of when he admitted to the 1967 murder of Nancy Vogel, which he admitted to in 2010. There were other mutilation murders that were probably done by Richard Cottingham. On December 2nd of 79, there were headless people found dead in a Travel Inn motel. There were 2. In May of 1980, Valerie Street murdered in the Quality Inn. And on May 15th, he was really busy in May of 1980. There was a Hotel Seville mutilation and murder.
Wow.
Yeah,
That guy was busy.
Pretty busy dude.
We just said that at the same time.
Had heard of him. Had you heard of him before, Christy?
I don't think I have.
That's a lot for true crime people like we are. I'm surprised we hadn't heard.
It's the first I've ever heard as well.
There's so many crazy people out there. So little time.
So, this next story, Christy, I took her name out, and actually on the tour, they're very respectful and don't have her name in. Okay. And more or less, I sort of wrote this just to paraphrase it. So this woman is still alive, and she lived through a horrific thing. But again, it's another crime committed in Hell's Kitchen. So if you don't mind just kind of citing the sources before we get going, that would be perfect.
I kind of remember this story.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, in the late 80s.
Yeah. It was, models in the 80s were a major thing. And so
Sure.
This is based on a couple of stories from the New York Times. Is that good enough?
Yeah,
okay.
That's fine. 1986 articles from the New York Times.
Yeah. It says a 25-year-old woman who came to Manhattan from Texas, and I believe I just moved out of Texas in that year. But anyway, in 1985, and had begun a successful career as a fashion model, was slashed in the face with a razor blade. Her former landlord and 2 other men were arrested and charged with assault. That doesn't sound like she just got slashed with a razor blade. After the attack, she underwent surgery and received about 100 stitches for 3 cuts on her face. Her former landlord, Stephen Roth, is charged with arranging the attack by 2 other men in a dispute over money and spurned affections. By this young age, her modeling career was brought to an abrupt end, and she will always have visible scars, facial scars. She has gone on to become a public speaker and victim advocate.
Yeah, so make no mistake, this was another situation. At first they try to say it was over a rent dispute, like somebody, a monetary dispute. But at the end of the day, Stephen Roth was obsessed with her, and they think he wanted to play a hero, more or less.
Yes, that's kind of the vibe we
So
got.
it was like he hired 2 men to attack her so he could come out and save her. But I mean, he was stalking her. He was following her everywhere she went. And yeah, just a really bad dude. And dudes do shitty shit to women.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those, oh, you're so scarred, I'm the only one that can possibly love you.
Yeah, that too is the control.
Damn.
Could love her after all that. So
lovely. It was very disturbing.
It really is. So,
moving on to other disturbing, let's talk about lumbersexuals. Well, okay, maybe not quite in that context. The dude in this next story actually kind of looks like how lumbersexuals look now, with the flannel, the long hair, the beards.
All the women get showed his picture on the tour, and apparently, like, a lot of them have thought he was hot. He just looks like a stinky old serial killer to me, but what do I know? Hello?
Hello.
Oh,
hi.
I didn't know you were, like, gone for a minute.
I thought she was in shock.
Oh!
Thinking about the lumbersexuals.
Oh, no. All right, so this is the Thompson Square Butcher. Daniel Rakovitz is an American murderer and cannibal. He was born in 1960 in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where his father was a criminal investigator for the U.S. Army. The Rakowitz family moved to Rockport, Texas sometime in the late 1970s. Daniel graduated from Rockport Fullerton High School in 1980. He attended high school in I don't even know what.
Graduated in 1980, so you're here.
Oh, perfect. Although it was common reported that he graduated from Rockport High School, he actually attended and graduated from high school in Refugio, Texas.
I probably should have cut that out. Who cares?
I mean, I guess his education. He moved to New York City around 1985. Daniel, an eccentric, well known to his East Village neighbors as a marijuana dealer and owner of a pet rooster, founded his own religion.
And a lumbersexual.
The Church of 1966, or pardon me, 966. In 1989, he walked around the East Village around Thompson Square Park, bragging to some of the people he believed were his disciples that he had killed his roommate and girlfriend, Monica Brill, a Swiss student at the Martha Graham Center of Contemporary Dance and a dancer at Billy's Topless. By his own confession, he dismembered her body in the bathtub, boiled the parts, and served some of her remains in the form of a soup to the homeless in the nearby Thompson Square Park. He said that he had boiled her head and made soup from her brain. He had tasted it, liked it, and therefore he referred to himself as a cannibal. At least one of the people to whom he told his tale went to the police. Daniel was arrested shortly thereafter and led the police to the Port Authority bus terminal storage area where he had stored her skull and teeth. On February 22nd, 1991, a New York jury found Daniel, then 31 years old, not guilty by reason of insanity for the killing of his roommate in August.
And for being a hot lumbersexual, so not guilty by reason of hotness.
In 2004, a jury found Daniel no longer dangerous, but decided that he is still mentally ill and should remain at the Kirby Forensic Psychiatric Center on New York City's Wards Island. Now, I think there was an update to that where he's actually now out. I could be wrong on that. He
might be out. I should Google this. I don't know.
Great.
Yeah. Right? So this one was a little bit hard to research. Hans Holzer, you guys know he's like a famous ghost hunter guy. The only place that I could find this info is it's directly from his book. So I'm literally reading pages from Hans Holzer's the Clinton Court Ghosts chapter of his book. And so it's written, very specific to the way that he speaks. But and Clinton Court, again, was the name of Hell's Kitchen before they coined the term Hell's Kitchen. So while casually leafing through the pages of Tomorrow magazine, I noticed a short piece by Wainwright Evans called Ghosts in Crinoline. The article, written in the spring of '59, told of a spectral inhabitant at number 422.5 West 46th Street in New York City. It seemed that Ruth Shaw, an artist who had for years lived in the rear section of the old building, which she had turned into a studio for herself, had spoken to Mr. Evans about her experiences. He had come to see her at Clinton Court, as the building was called. There was a charming iron gate through which you passed by the main house into a court. Beyond the court rose an arcaded rear section. I don't think that's the same thing that we think it is. 3 stories high and possessed of an outdoor staircase leading to the top. The outdoor staircase was possessed. They had a staircase that led to the top of the building. This portion dates back to 1809 or perhaps even before, and was at one time used as the coach house for Governor DeWitt Clinton. Miss Shaw informed Evans about the legends around the place. The first ghost ever to be seen at Clinton Court was that of Old Moore, a sailor hanged for mutiny at the Battery and buried in Potter's Field, which was only a short block away from the house. Today, this cemetery has disappeared beneath the teeming tenement houses of Middle West Side Hell's Kitchen's outer approaches. But Old Moore, as he was called, did not have to go far to haunt anyone. Clinton Court was the first big house in his path. The coachman's wife saw the apparition and, while running away from Old Moore, fell down the stairs. This was unfortunate as she was expecting a child at the time. She died of the fall, but the child survived. The irony of this was that soon the mother's ghost was seen around the court too, usually hanging around the baby. That's so sad. Thus, ghost number 2 joined the cast at the governor's old house.
Wow, it's just chock full.
There are some crazy ass stories, am I right?
Lots of ghosts
So
up in there.
This next excerpt, I didn't want to put it out there because this is directly from our tour guide's document that they gave us. But it's about Murderers Row, which is apparently the area between West 39th to 8th Avenue, all the way to 11th Avenue. And this may not sound like a lot, but also it's all murders of men on women, which is just sort of weird. A lot of domestic disputes, a lot of prostitute murders. So basically, there were 15 total murders between the dates of 1870 to 1935, just in this really kind of short area. So just some of the highlights of this, just the hits. Let's see. Common law husband stabbed in the rear room of a saloon. That's Taylor Hutchins. Adam was stabbed at a ball held in the same saloon. Minna Miller was kept in a cigar store and was murdered on her wedding day.
Gosh.
Actually, they're not all women, but okay. This Frederick Judd killed himself after attempting to kill his wife. I think I remember that. They ran out into the street and she was getting help, and so he killed himself. Let's see. Peter Christ murdered his wife with his 7-year-old watching, which is lovely. And I'm not going to do all of these. One guy murdered his father but was never caught, which is kind of interesting. He kind of ran off. Another woman was found dead. Annie Halpin Fisher was found dead in the hallway after the blizzard that we mentioned. So basically, people took advantage of the storm to just kind of do like the purge and just kill people while they couldn't get help. This guy, Lassa Hammer, shoots his wife and kills his father-in-law, then shoots himself twice but lives. Probably just got to go to a mental health facility for a couple of years and be out. Susan Martin was beheaded. I don't think that one was solved. Let's see. Eliza Ring was beaten to death by her husband, who wasn't even charged because 1870 was a shit time for women.
I understand why they call it Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
because women are in the kitchen, right? You put the women
really
in the
ought to
kitchen.
just call it the murderers row. Yeah,
no shit.
John Mooney kills his wife Ellen in Hell's Kitchen and gets second-degree assault slap on the wrist. And this patrol officer, his partner was killed, and the witnesses were shot. So, yeah, those are your murderers row stories and snippets, things that we didn't have time to go cover in entirety.
Wow.
There's a couple other little tidbits that are kind of fun about Hell's Kitchen. Well, maybe not fun about Hell's Kitchen. It was such a rough and tumble area. The cops would always patrol in 2 or more and never at night.
Yeah.
Damn.
The cops were afraid, and so basically shit would happen there, and they'd be like, meh, it's Hell's Kitchen.
Never mind.
Kind of walking around Hell's Kitchen, we actually found, I forgot exactly what street it was on, but the building number 666. Both of the places that hold residents are actually 666 and a half, so they don't have to be the devil's number.
Wow, like 13 in the elevator, huh?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So, extremely cool tour. It was literally a dark and stormy night when we were out there. It was cold as balls and wet. Hey, that's what she said. But if you guys watch the stories, Megan's adorbs, and the stories are just so well told. So anyway, thanks again to Ghosts and Murders Walking Tours.
Ghost Murders and Mayhem Walking
Tours in New York City. And we are tagging all their socials for this when we post this episode. And yeah.
Sounds awesome. And also, you guys can view the videos on our Patreon. It's getting back up and running again. It only took us 10 months to get back on there.
We are saving money to buy a trademark.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of drama in the podcast space right now with people stealing each other's ideas.
And
really
we've
creative
already
in general.
Yes, we've already gotten a couple that have ripped us off. So let's go ahead and get that shit tied down. And podcasting is not cheap. So
we need a trademark because it's like the condom of we need protection.
Yes.
Or like hiring the mafia to protect us. I'm not really sure. I don't think a trademark is that powerful. I'm thinking condom because it could break.
Let's just take them on vacation to Hell's Kitchen and let it work itself out.
Looking at me like a...
Well, no, I'm just trying to think of other ways to spin the condom of trademark, but I don't really know. The rubber of protection, the rubber of justice, I don't know. Not the rubber of justice. I'm going to stop talking now.
The rubber of
creativity? No. That's an eraser.
Well, I would like to say, I would like to tell y'all a story real quick. I think that you will be very proud of me. For anybody who actually frequently listens to the show understands my
3,500 people a week, baby.
more
too.
than that.
So fucking
Yeah, my absolute and total abject fear of anything going near my eyeballs, and my fact that I can't watch anything on TV that has eyeball situations in it. I am
Yes.
now.
So send her all your eyeball videos,
Yes.
everybody.
Well, y'all are ready to be really
Slip them
proud.
into her DMs. Be like, hey, girl, I got some eyeball porn for you.
Squish.
Are y'all ready to be real proud of me?
We're ready.
I am now a card-carrying wearer of contact lenses for the first time in almost 45 years next month.
Yay.
I've went and had contact lessons and put contacts in my eyeballs, and I absolutely lost my shit the first couple of times. And then,
yeah, actually, for anybody who doesn't think that's a big deal, touching your eyes and being able to keep your eye open while you do that, it's hard. Your body, like, that's the whole point of having eyelids, is your body tries to protect your eyes from being directly manipulated. I used to wear contacts for many years. I was okay with it, but like my husband, there's no fucking way. Like he gets something stuck in his eye, like all the other things he's tough about, something in my eye. He's like a big fucking baby, and I have to like dig it out. But yeah, eye stuff is real, y'all.
Yes, I don't. You're talking about it, and my eyes are watering just hearing you talk about it. I literally only was a success because I was embarrassing myself at Karis Eye Group. I apologize to anybody who has to deal with crazies like me in that world, because I was freaking the fuck out. So I finally had to
the only one though.
No.
Oh no, they said I wasn't. They said like, "Oh, you're not the first." I'm like, "Yeah,
well, they're
but
being nice.
but I was literally embarrassing myself in the middle of. There was a kid sitting next to me putting in her contacts, like she got them in the first try, and I'm like over there, like every time it got near my eyeball, I would start
that's
losing
me
it.
with contacts as well. I have to just do glasses, otherwise I just start to freak out.
Yeah, I'm wearing contacts now, so. We'll see. We'll see how long it lasts, but I'm just trying not to think about it.
Don't fall asleep in them. That sucks. They're like stuck to your eyeball. That's not fun.
Yep. That's one of the things that she put the fear of life in me. And last thing I need is that kind of an experience. Then that'll never happen again. So anyway, just thought I would share, because I'm always talking about eyeball parts of horror movies and how it freaks me out. And here I am with something in my eyeballs.
For you to send her all the eyeballs.
Yeah.
May I offer an alternative to calling them contacts?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
No, he has a suggestion.
No, I have a suggestion.
What?
One of my friends likes to call them eye plugs.
Eye plugs? Oh, that sounds worse to me. No,
that sounds
no.
Worse.
So contacts, okay.
No.
Eye
plugs.
Eye condoms. Contacts are the rubbers of the eyeball world.
Y'all are making my eyes water. I wish I hadn't talked about it. I'm like, oh,
I have it.
I just reminded myself. The worst part isn't that it was putting them in. It was leaving them in. Knowing that there is something on my eyeball absolutely is horrifying to me. And I had to just like stop thinking about it. Like stop thinking about it. And I'm like, there's something in my eyeball right now. Right now, there's something in my eyeball. And I would start freaking out.
You know, on the upside, though, all the dust and shit that usually gets in your eye that you don't even know about is going to hit your contacts instead of your eyeball. So yay for contacts. Like I said, condom of the eye.
Okay. I'm like, you say so.
You have protection now. Is my point. Your eye's not going to get impregnated by any dust.
Yay! No pregnant eyeballs. That sounds fantastic.
I think that's a good life goal.
Yeah.
Whenever the eye doctor was, looking into my eyes, because I have a floater, is what they're called, where there's like a dark spot in my eyeball, and they have to always like check it every 6 months to make sure it's not. No, they thought it might be, but they did testing and it wasn't. It's common, I guess. It happens with people. But so she has one of these things that she holds up to your eye, and it shines a light through it, and she basically looks into your eyeball. And I'm like, how do you do that all day? Oh my God.
They can see your brain through that too.
They can.
Oh, I can't. I just.
In my case, it's a wind tunnel.
Yeah, they see through the back of the head.
It's like a bunch of dad jokes all floating around in space.
Yeah.
Hey, I have been good and not done any.
I don't know. You asked if you could be a ghost, so
That wasn't a dab the joke. That was a horrible Dan joke. There is a difference.
Oh my God.
Separated by a letter.
Pull up, everybody, and pull out.
I am.
We won't even need a condom.
Yeah.
That's not how that works, kids. Use protection every time.
Especially on eyeballs.
Yeah, especially for your eyeballs. Wear eye gear. Anyway, I'm on the safety committee, and that's all I'm thinking about. Safety stuff, you guys. Safety first.
The fact that we're on this podcast and you're referring to kids just really explains.
I meant like young people. I'm sure we have a demographic of late teens, early 20s.
Oh, I
don't want to hear what Grandma wants to say about.
I'm sure they really want to listen to old us.
They're all here for Dan jokes.
Although I don't know if you guys saw the review on iTunes the other day talking about how they love that we talk about your boobs all the time. I thought that was hysterical.
You know, following. It's okay, girls.
She like, just petted them.
Especially like it when they talk about Moni's boobs. So funny.
For that, and we get pay for the trademark, get the breast. Yes. See how that works? Just age old. That's anyway, on that note,
patent pending, y'all.
Social medias.
I know Dan can't do his because he's on the down low.
No. I have
He's on the down low.
I have a public Twitter.
Oh, well then do it.
Do what?
Tell what it is.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm in a mood. I was in professional training all day. So if you want to follow me on Twitter for really horrible Dan jokes or D&D or anything therein,
they're gonna rush to it.
Caffeinated_Dan.
Sweet. Caffeinated_Dan. I was talking while you said it, so here I am repeating it for you. Okay.
I appreciate that.
So hopefully,
Christy, what are your socials?
Okay, mine is Creepin' at Christy on Instagram, and on Twitter it is Creepin_it.
Ding.
Ding.
That was my wine glass and my nails.
You're smart. Were you trying to say something else too?
Well, I was just looking at the recording, and you guys are really loud, and I'm really quiet on there, but I'm hoping that it just means that it's going to balance out. It just, in my brain, in my brain, it screams at me how uneven the audio is, but I'm like, oh, please let this be.
I think you'll be okay. Besides that, we're all really low, like including you, so if we all were a little higher, that'd be fine too.
You guys are high.
So my socials are Moni Bear across the board. Do you have any? I forgot. Oh, yeah. We're doing the H.H. Holmes story for next week's episode.
Yes.
Oh, I cannot wait to listen to that.
Yes, it's going to be good, y'all.
Let me just say, you guys have had a particular good run of shows the last few episodes.
It's because it's Halloween. This is Halloween. This is Halloween. Halloween. This is how we grab all the Halloween listeners. We get a huge flood of people at this time. And we try to...
They're all here to see my boobs.
They all do want to hear about Moni's boobs, which I was like, hey, video, Moni's boobs. Oh, no Moni's boobs.
Yeah. Well, let's get our Patreon ramped up, and maybe there'll be more breasts, you know?
Woo. Do it for the breasts, people. Do it for the breasts.
Hey, for $5 a month, that's nice. We should do a drunk horror story boob fest.
I was going to say, to be fair, you can get porn for free is the problem, so...
Yeah, but not how many porns?
Well, allegedly. That's what Dad told me.
Right.
I'm giving shifty eyes right now. I don't know what... I am completely innocent.
What is porn?
I spend enough time in hotel rooms to know where the porn comes from.
You know, all these... I thought it was corn.
No, it's Norp.
I bring my own entertainment. Anywho.
And I do too. They're my boobs. I bring them with me to hotel rooms.
No, I bring my outside entertainment.
South party.
Battery operated. Anyway, moving on. All right, y'all. So tune in for H.H. Holmes. I've got some interesting, because I've been listening to a shit ton of podcasts about it, watching a show, reading a book. Apparently he was a little... some of his stories weren't as accurate as people like to portray them, and he actually wasn't as involved in the World's Fair as what people like to say.
Really?
We're going to reveal a few little truths in there, and also talk about the crazy-ass man. That dude was fucking ruthless. So.
Oh, man, was he?
Yeah, he wasn't fucking around. So you know you're committed to something when you literally build a castle to murder. Like, you didn't just like go out in the street and be lazy. You like created an entire block of people to stay just for your murdering pleasure. So it's gonna be.
And I bet you Richard
love it.
Cunningham from this story would have loved to have a block of hotel
Right?
rooms to murder people in.
Totally would have. Maybe if he had just been a little bit more proactive about his murdering, he could have done that.
If he had stopped setting shit on fire after he did it, he probably wouldn't have even been caught.
Well, you know, the funniest part about Holmes is like, and we'll talk about this more in the other episode, but like he had no money. Like everything was a flim flam for him. Like he would pay a ton of people to do the work and then, or he wouldn't pay them. Like he would hire them and not pay them. And so it supported several different things that he was going for, but one of them was not fucking paying them. And so he got almost an entire block hotel built for practically nothing.
Kind of sounds like Marie Laveau, where she had like the slaves, and then if they demanded any kind of payment or respect, she'd kill them.
Yeah, sounds kind of like Donald Trump, but okay, we can go with Laveau.
Yes.
Anyway, we're not political here, but he's famous in New York for not paying his bills, so that's just a fact.
Oh,
and we're not.
We can tell that story.
Oh,
we
man.
have a Donald Trump New York story.
Oh, what is it?
From our tour guide, actually. So we were making small talk because Moni had to pee. And it turns out, Trump Tower, obviously, is in New York City. Apparently, the construction was so cheap and shittily done that they have to have a 24-hour door, like ushers, to open the door.
We trained.
Because the doors don't open and shut properly.
Because the ventilation is so weird, it creates this suction cup action. So you have to open the doors just right.
Wow.
Talk about cost savings is the fact that you have to pay staff to do that instead of fixing the fucking doors.
Yeah.
That sounds like such a Trump thing.
Yep, totally. Sorry.
Mexico will pay for the door to be fixed.
Sorry
They're
to
still waiting.
all you new people that like Trump, but we just we know the facts that he doesn't pay his bills. I mean, that's just regardless of what he's doing right now, he does not pay people. So that's what happens when you don't pay people. You get shit like that.
Devolved. Yardley would be like full face palm by now.
He would be. All right.
On that note,
well,
thank you for listening.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Sorry.
Yay, thanks for being.
Sorry we don't have any boobs this episode, but you can guarantee you that.
I have boobs. You have boobs. We all have boobs.
I mean, I have boobs.
I am a boob.
And hey, we did talk about how boobs were cut off, so there was that. So you're welcome. So
No.
You don't have to listen to this.
Don't cut the boobs. Be nice to the boobs.
I agree.
And on that note, thanks for listening.
I don't know where I was going with that. I'm tired. Okay, I've been
It's
hanging
late,
out
we're
with
tired.
cows all week. I'm not used to talking to humans, so you're just gonna have to excuse me in my weirdness right now. But
would it help if I mooed?
no, it would not, because I've had just about enough of that. I'll tell you. I'll immediately smell cow shit if you did that. So I'll be like, no, it would regress me. But. All right, y'all.
Let's not do that.
With that, everybody, hey, keep it real for real this month. Go out, have a good adventure. Scare the shit out of yourselves, man. Let's do this. Yeah. And I want to hear some good stories. You guys contact us. I want to hear it.
Yes?
Yes.
She was on my group.
Yes.
On that note. Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Creep it real.